Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We had a ton of action since there are no games tomorrow. That meant that 28 out of the 30 teams played, so many close matchups, 30 pieces, 40 pieces, even a 50 bomb from some of the guys in the association, overtime games, close games that went down to the wire, comebacks. You had everything tonight, and all of that means we need to not waste much time here, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. As you probably guessed, we're going to start off by talking about the Denver Nuggets versus the Blazers. Whenever these two teams play, it feels like it's always a classic, and this one felt like it might be trending in that direction as well, at least in the first half, but by the third quarter, the Nuggets kind of got this one in control and eventually would win by a pretty comfortable margin. They were led, of course, by Nikola Jokic, who had 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists, just a typical stat line from him, and now that the Nuggets are the first seed in the Western Conference and he continuously plays better and better, he may be the front runner for MVP at this point, which would give him 3 in a row and make him just the 4th player ever to do that and the first since Larry Bird. The Joker is averaging 25 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists, while shooting 62% from the field on, once again, the best team in the Western Conference right now. He is one of the single most dominant offensive players in the history of basketball. You might think that I'm over exaggerating there, but I'm not. I don't know if there's ever been a player with his size that has his combination of shooting ability as well as playmaking. He's easily the best playmaking center of all time, and probably a top 10, top 5 playmaker in the history of the sport. What he's able to do with the basketball, the way that he manipulates defenses, they send a double at him, he can just pass right out of it, and you have to send doubles because otherwise he's going to hit the most awkward looking shot you've ever seen right over you and probably make your defense feel like they can't do anything, because to be honest, they probably can't. Whenever he's on a court or on a team, he's going to have you in the top 5 in defense and more than likely more towards the top 3, even towards the top spot. And the Nuggets are sitting right about at that mark at the 3rd best offense in the league. It's just incredible what he does. It doesn't matter what players he has around him. I would be confident that you could put Jokic on a squad of G Leaguers and he would get them to at least a top 10 offense in the NBA. He's just that gifted as a point center, one of the most unique players we've ever seen, one of the most dominant players of the modern era, and he would be very deserving of a 3rd MVP award if he does end up getting the opportunity to earn that. And he's doing all of this despite once again his co-stars struggling to stay on the court. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. both returned from absences in this game, and give them credit, they were both really good. Jamal Murray in particular had 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 12 dimes. He was just 2 boards off his first career triple-double. As I mentioned, he's been struggling to stay on the court and somewhat lacked consistency when he has been on it, but this was a huge game. This is one of the first times this season, although there have been a couple other instances, but this one in particular felt like we were seeing the Jamal Murray of old. He was hitting step-back threes, attacking the basket with ease, finishing through contact, playmaking for other guys. Like I said, he had 12 dimes. It was just very impressive what I was seeing from Jamal. This is the type of play that the Nuggets need from him, the high-level scoring, the playmaking. If he's engaged in playing like this, and hopefully this will be a performance that gets him somewhat back in that rhythm, the Nuggets become even more dangerous than they have been so far this season. And then for Michael Porter Jr., he had 18 points on 54% shooting. He did most of his damage in the 3rd quarter, as did Jamal Murray, and that was really when they started to run away with things. When all 3 of their big 3 are operating on offense, it is basically impossible to stop them. When you have a point guard that can attack the defense in multitude of ways, you have Nikola Jokic, like we talked about, one of the most unstoppable offensive forces in the history of the league, and Michael Porter Jr., a 6'10 guy that can drill threes right over you and can cut to the basket. It's very hard to get stops. You combine that with the fact that they've got KCP out there who can knock down some threes. He had a few in this game. Aaron Gordon, who's been really solid on offense this season and has always given you pretty good defense. Some solid role players outside of them, like a Bruce Brown, who is one of my favorite role players in the league. He had 9 points, 3 boards, and 4 dimes. And I swear, if hustle plays were a stat, Bruce Brown would lead the league basically every single season, or at least be top 10. Maybe a guy like Marcus Smart might be a bit more towards that 1 spot, but Bruce Brown, I feel like continuously gets undervalued wherever he goes. When he was in Detroit, I felt like they slept on him. They traded him away. When he was in Brooklyn, he was so important, and then they let him walk. I don't know why Bruce Brown keeps getting let walk by teams, but hopefully Denver is a home for him and they realize how great he is and how impactful he can be every second he's on the court. Right now, the Nuggets are looking like the contender I thought they would be heading into the year. They're at the 1 seed. They're 20-11 on the season. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. They're really building a rhythm and starting to roll, and it's not surprising why. Like I said, an MVP caliber player, 2 really solid offensive co-stars that seem like they may be finding a rhythm, a great cast of role players, a pretty solid coach in Michael Malone. It's not surprising. I thought they would be the 1 seed. That was my prediction heading into the year, but it isn't exactly in the way that they're doing it. I knew they would be a phenomenal offense. Like I said, they're third in the league, but they're also winning in spite of their defense, which is one of the worst in the NBA. They're 24th in defense, and you can kind of tell when you look at their personnel. While Jokic has continuously improved defensively over the course of his career, he's never been a high-level rim protector and doesn't have great foot speed. Jamal Murray's never been a great stopper at the point guard position. Michael Porter Jr. really lacks defensively most times he's out there on the court. Aaron Gordon's pretty good, and KCP gives you some solid moments, but outside of those two guys, it's a pretty weak defensive starting lineup. And off the bench, you have other guys who lack in defense, especially like a Bones Highland. They don't have a true backup center. They signed DeAndre Jordan, who doesn't play because he's not very good. They have Zeke Naji, who's a bit small as a backup big. Jeff Green is a good backup four, but he can't really play small ball center. So there are some very obvious concerns as to why their defense is bad, but they're still winning, so it's a weird situation that doesn't make a ton of sense. If we went into the playoffs today and this Nuggets team won the title, they would be the worst defensive team by defensive rating to ever win it all. That is a bit concerning if you are Denver. You can get by only so much offensively. To win a championship, you have to have at least a solid defense, unless you are like the greatest offensive team of all time, which, you know, maybe the Nuggets can just go out and score 150 every night, but I don't think that's super sustainable. Three-point shooting can have high variance, and for the Nuggets, you can't really afford that. So I do believe they need to shore up this defense to truly become the Western Conference favorites like maybe they believe they can be. And there are some names out there I do believe they can acquire to do so. Guys like Alex Caruso, for example, who can be a really solid backup guard, play some high-level defense, knock down some shots, give you some playmaking as well, which I feel like they do need in this team a little bit more beyond Jokic. A guy like him, I believe, would be perfect. And for a backup big, a Jakob Poeltl, if you could somehow acquire him from the Spurs, that would be beautiful. That would legitimately solidify them into one of the scariest teams in the NBA, because Poeltl is not just a great starting center, he would be the perfect backup center for Nikola Jokic. He might be the first high caliber backup that Jokic has ever have. I'm trying to think if there are any names that I'm forgetting, but I don't think so. I think Jokic has gone most of his career without a great backup center, which makes sense. You don't really need one when you have an MVP guy there, but I do think that bringing in a player like a Poeltl, or even someone of a lower caliber that can just protect the rim a bit and give you some solid defense when Jokic isn't on the court, is highly necessary. So if the Nuggets can make some of these moves, I think it would make them even scarier. But I will say at the moment, regardless of the defensive issues, which I do think will get a bit better as the team builds cohesion and gets everybody on the court, they are still absolutely dominant offensively, starting to build chemistry and look like they're establishing themselves as potentially the favorite in the Western Conference. I think this upcoming stretch will be really, really telling for them as they play 12 pretty difficult games. They face off against the Suns, then the Kings twice, then the Heat, the Celtics, the Timberwolves, the Clippers, the Cavs, the Lakers, the Suns, and then the Clippers again. There are a lot of really good teams over that stretch, especially ones that can score the ball with ease. We talked about the Celtics and the Cavaliers, who are right there with the Nuggets in the top three offenses. So if Denver really wants to prove themselves and lock down defensively, this is the stretch to prove that they can do so. And if that isn't the case and they drop a lot of these matchups, they may really need to look into the trade market to fix some of those issues. As for the Blazers, they continue this skid they're on, losing 4 out of their last 5 games, including the last 3 in a row, 2 to OKC and now this one to Denver. They need to kind of figure things out. A few of those matchups have been pretty close losses, so maybe they just need to get better in those clutch time situations, which is weird. When you have a player like Damian Lillard, you would expect them to win those close clutch time games. Hasn't really been the case, so maybe the Blazers will be a bit better when they get a bit healthier. I know they're still missing Gary Payton II, but it is a bit concerning the skid that they're on. Moving on to some other matchups, we had the Sixers face off against the Clippers, which was a phenomenal game. The Clippers won it by as much as 20 in this one, but the Sixers fought all the way back to win at the end of regulation, and they were led by Joel Embiid and James Harden, who probably had their best game together as a duo. Embiid dropped 44 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists, while James Harden had 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 21 dimes, tying the Sixers' franchise record in assists. It was amazing. If Philly can get this type of synergy out of these guys on any given night, it becomes way scarier for opposing teams facing them. When Harden is playmaking at his peak level like tonight, Embiid is dominating defenses inside and out, it's really hard to stop Philly, especially when your role players play good like they did tonight as well. And they're also getting Tyrese Maxey back soon, probably within the next week, who's a 20 point per game efficient scorer. Philly is looking great. They've won 7 games in a row off a 7-game homestand. They're heading on the road next, so we'll see if this success can continue. But like I said in my Philly video, the last one before this, the Sixers are looking more and more like a contender, and I still do believe they could lift the Larry O'Brien at the end of the year. As for the Clippers, like I said, they led by as much as 20, but they just fell apart in the second half. It felt like Tyronn Lue kind of failed to make adjustments when Harden started to pick apart their defense. One bright spot is that Kawhi Leonard has been looking seem more and more like the Kawhi of old. He had 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 dimes in this one. Very great performance from him, knocking down clutch mid-range jumpers, playing some good defense. If Kawhi Leonard can continue to get back to form, then they can kind of figure things out even more than they already have. One thing I would like to see from them is them maybe acquire a better backup big. They've got some decent bodies, but outside of Zubac, there's no really physical forces to keep up with a guy like Joel Embiid, so I think that is one issue they might need to address at the deadline. Next, we had Nets versus Bucks, which is one that I was highly anticipating because the Bucks are right up there with the Celtics as the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and the Nets have been on absolute fire, the hottest team in the league at the moment, so I was excited to see how this one played out, and Brooklyn ended up blowing them out, and most importantly, they blew them out without KD or Kyrie scoring 25 points. One of the issues with the Nets has always been if KD and Kyrie don't play amazing, they're not going to win games, but in this one, and I will say KD and Kyrie played pretty good. KD had 24, 5, and 6, and Kyrie had 18, 9 with 6 dimes, which all around is great performances, but they didn't have to play like superheroes for Brooklyn to get a blowout win over a championship contender. That is very impressive, and it came down to their role players, guys like Ben Simmons, who had 12, 11, and 8. TJ Warren had 12 points. Royce O'Neal had 17. Nick Claxton had 19, 8, and 5, and at one point, he was trading buckets with Giannis, which was wild to watch. Their role players are really stepping up in a big way. Jacques Vaughn has done a great job as the coach, and the Nets are really rolling and looking more like the part of contenders in the East. The Bucks were of course led by Giannis with 23 points and 16 boards, as well as 7 assists. However, that also came with 7 turnovers, a big issue for him tonight. Brook Lopez had 23 and 5, Portis had a double-double, but they really struggled outside of that, and in particular, they struggled from outside. They shot just 9 of 37 from 3 in this game, which you can't have, and their offenses continue to look really rough. They're not knocking down looks that they probably should. Guys aren't as good of shooters as maybe they expected coming into the season. I think when they get Chris Middleton back, he'll fix a lot of the issues, get them back into their natural offensive flow, and really just take some of the burden off some of those other players. Drew Holiday in particular has been trying to be their second option, and he just really isn't that. Chris Middleton is much more suited for that role, so when he comes back, I think some of the issues will be fixed, but I do believe that Milwaukee should still maybe look for some scores like a Jordan Clarkson type at the trade deadline. Moving on to Pelicans versus Thunder, New Orleans got a win without Zion or Brandon Ingram in overtime. They had 7 guys play 20 plus minutes, and every single one of them scored in double digits. They were led by Jackson Hayes, who had 21 points, and Trey Murphy, who had 23. They really just flexed their depth in this matchup as the Pelicans continue to look like one of the best teams out west. And as for my OKC Thunder, tough loss, losing just barely, which seems to be a theme over recent games, and I think that's a good sign. When you have a young team that's playing really close against these great squads, even if they are without some of their stars, it shows a lot about the squad's resilience, especially when the Thunder consistently go down by like 10, 15, even 20 points in this game early on. They're able to fight back and continue playing for the win. They believe they can make their way back to leading, and they did for multiple parts in this game, mostly in particular due to the play of Gilgeous-Alexander, who had a career high 44 points. He shot 3 of 4 from 3, efficient from the field, and it was a big bounce back from him after he struggled last time against New Orleans due to the great defense of Herb Jones. Shea seemed to figure out some things that he could exploit in this matchup the second time, and he did exactly that. He barely missed out on a game-tying 3 from half court at the buzzer in overtime and hit front rim and bounced off. Would have been an incredible way to send things to double OT and just continuing his great clutch play over the season. However, that was not the case, and the Thunder catch this L. The final game that I'm going to go in depth into is Hornets versus Lakers, because this video is already getting very long. LaMelo led the way for the Charlotte Hornets in a win with 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's been playing great basketball since returning from injury. Rozier had 23, PJ Washington had 24 points, and Gordon Hayward got a game winner on a goaltend, which you very rarely, if ever, see in this league. And that leads me to talking about the hilarious stretch that ended this game for the Lakers. They were tied with less than a minute remaining and got a steal, push it up the court on a 4-on-1 fast break, and managed to turn it over because Austin Reeves passed it and Pat Bev thought it was him, so he tipped it up, and Russell Westbrook tried to grab it and it went out of bounds. The next play, they goaltend Gordon Hayward's game winner attempt to give the Hornets the lead, and then on the next out of bounds play, LeBron James gets the inbound pass and loses his shoe, passes out to Dennis Schroeder after he falls over. He misses the 3. The Hornets get the win. The Lakers just continuously find inventive ways to lose basketball games, and they are must-watch TV every single night, even if it's not for the best reasons. To wrap things up, we're going to rapid fire the rest of the games. The Magic beat the Spurs by 20, led by Cole Anthony, who had a near triple-double. DeMar DeRozan hit a game winner to give Chicago a dub over the Knicks. The Celtics blew out the Timberwolves, led by Jaylen Brown's 36, 7, and 3. Trey and DeJounte Murray each had 26 points in an annihilation of the Pistons. Siakam and OG Anunoby each also had 26 points in a win over the Cavaliers. Dallas squeaked out a W over Houston behind Luka's 50-piece alongside 8 rebounds and 10 dimes. The Pacers beat the Heat by 3 on a Halliburton game winner, which gave him 43 points. The Wizards took down the Kings by 14 as Kuzma dropped 32, 9, and 5. And finally, the Grizzlies beat the Suns by 25 points as Triple J and Brandon Clark each had a 24 and 10 double-double. Those are the games. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you're sad that there's no hoops tomorrow, I will be dropping a video giving you my all-star picks at the moment, sometime in midday, so make sure you look out for that one. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.